you look at the interface of the current talent tree, and you see in the middle now we have hero talents. We're probably gonna have another row below.
We're definitely gonna have more up until last time, right? Because this is the World Soul Saga thing.
Yeah, but what after that? What's gonna happen after that? Are we looking at a potential borrowed power, quote unquote borrowed power situation for the future of WoW? They did say they're for now, they're not looking at that solution.
I think they're afraid to look further than this because it was kind of like Legion, where Legion just brought a whole new stuff that raised the bar high.
Whoa,
and after Legion, there was like either going to be a bigger high or a big drop, and we know how that went.
No, it went bad. Now, granted, right? We went through the artifact power grind, the Azerite grind, the Torghast conduit, all of that nonsense from Shadowlands grind, Anima power grind. Okay, I forgot the name of it. And obviously, people got really fed up because of that. There was like huge amounts of just burnout on doing a lot of chores and just grinding infinitely for that borrowed power. You guys remember, I'm sure, there was huge heated discussions regarding this. And we went back to the time where the only borrowed power, because this is still borrowed power, tier sets are borrowed power. Even trinkets with effects are borrowed power. But they're borrowed power and that would make much more sense, and we're way more accustomed to it because it's part of the RPG.
The grind is added differently, and we have a lot of parallels that we can talk about that's also in House of Blizzard as well. But when it comes to tier sets and gear, it's usually the scope of you playing the game. The scope of you playing the game is not to level up your neck piece with putting magical points into it. It's to just get a bigger sword or get a bigger shield or anything like that. That makes sense for an RPG game, and that is fine. I mean, the fact that, the WoW is seasonal, essentially everything is borrowed power for like 5 or 6 months before the next season starts, that's, a different topic for a different video. But it's clear that something's going to happen with the hero talents. If they go away, those would be what we would call borrowed power without probably the grind, because you just get them, but then you lose them. What's more realistic is going to be that some of the more successful hero talents are going to make it into the class or spec identity. If they're giga successful, which I don't think they are just yet, maybe they will become just a part of your class in the future, just like how, the current talents are. It's going to be crowded, but in support of that, what we have seen is like a good example is Survival Hunter, the rework, where it went from a very generic RPG spec of, you have all of these points you can put, all of these nodes you can put points in, and you have, get 5% more damage, 5% more crit. But what happens if you keep adding cool new talents, where some talents have to go away because you're not going to have like 250 nodes, right? This is not Path of Exile. What talents are going to go away? Well, the ones that are the boring ones, the 5% crit, the 5% damage, which are the ones that went away for survival. So they clearly have the means to be able to filter out the boring stuff from specs and classes and let the cool stuff get in, so they could put the hero talents in. Now, in terms of the actual borrow power, there are positive examples for borrow power as well.
Yeah, what would those be? Because we like initially, okay, let's talk about Legion first. When we first got, when we're not touching on the legendaries, the whole RNGness of that is different. Just talking about the artifact weapons. Yeah. When you tied that borrowed power to something so personal, like your
you cannot
weapon.
Take it away.
And that was the mistake. Now I'm talking about strictly the positive. We didn't know, like back in Legion, we didn't know what's going to happen in BFA. We, as far as we were concerned, we believed that those artifact weapons will be with us forever. Not in the sense of power necessarily, but just
they somehow would make it to the class. I mean, it was a contentious topic because you didn't loot a weapon in the entire expansion. That was weird.
Yeah,
that was essentially weird.
I was fine with that.
The people who argue for borrowed power, I think what they argue for is what artifact weapons essentially were, a way of progressing your character that didn't stop once you reached max level. That felt like whenever you did a new raid or more dungeons, you kept getting more, and you essentially maybe unlocked the cool new passive or maybe the capstone of your artifact weapon. Essentially, that was cool. That was very dangerous to do because it might have created and might create in this day and age, you don't have the 5 points in your weapon yet? Well, you cannot join our raid yet because you don't have the 5 points. Go grind more, right? So if they would ever implement that style of borrow power, they would have to, really think about it. Another borrow power that people, you could say they had maybe mixed opinions, but that's not necessarily because of the borrow power itself, but mostly how it was implemented. It was corruptions in BFA. When the friction of acquiring them has been stripped away 90% of the time, people love that shit. It was explosive.
It was crazy.
Cool, and you took your character from like, oh, I'm a happy-go-lucky guy, and then you're like all full of tentacles and 10,000 eyes on your left knee. and then you spawn that big eye of corruption, like was 200 meters wide, and then you just spawn beams and stuff. That was chaotic, but it was fun. And whether you like it or not, it was borrowed power, and people enjoyed it.
Yes.
And it's clear that people don't enjoy the mindless grind, the carrot on a stick, you just need to be logged in today. Why? Because otherwise you're behind. That's what they didn't like. That's what they didn't like about Torghast. I went to do Torghast before just to farm transmogs, and if you take away the necessity, the grind, the mandatory chore, it's actually a fun content. And we've said this in alpha when we've tested it for the first time, and pretty much everybody that tested it in alpha, whenever it was not tied to a mandatory grind, a chore, an objective, people enjoyed it. So I think that would probably be the future.
Well, again, back to the artifact thing. So that was artifact power done right, because at least at the beginning, it gave you, first of all, it gave you your power, the essential thing. But it was not only that. That's the thing. You had the artifact weapons, which you would follow a million different quests and different secrets and stuff to unlock.
It was a good implementation of power, yeah.
Yeah. So we always talk about this thing where Blizzard keeps on missing this whole give the people their unlimited crazy options to customize their characters, to color their characters, to like tint whatever. Now Legion had this with its borrowed power. The borrowed power were the artifact weapons. The artifact weapons had a million different skins, colors, whatever, and you were incentivized. So the thing is, you didn't really feel the rat race as much because you were so attached to this thing of yours and it was so personal. But it became even more personal because you invested time to chase the looks of it. And going back the Ashbringer, a couple of the skins from it was crazy to get all of these. You didn't think about the fact that, oh my God, I still need to grind this and such artifact power to get this. No,
for sure.
It was a very good example. All of the skins they did, and that was such a good way. They dropped the ball when BFA came around, in the sense that, making them much more personal and personalized. This is what I'm saying, and this is what they could do. Talking about what is good borrowed power. You're gonna have to grind for it. That's it. It's an RPG. You're gonna have to work. Okay, not grind. Work for it. Okay, the best of the best has to be worked for. This is how RPGs work. Now,
that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Not saying
it's just how they implement the grind.
But even if you're gonna implement that chore shit, do it like in Legion. And give me that artifact power, make it so personal that I really
that would be Legion had its faults as well, and the only reason it really worked the way it worked is because it was also gated. Otherwise, people would get huge advantages and you would live behind. And there are also people who couldn't actually play their characters because they didn't get the right legendary, and it would take.
That's why I didn't want to touch on the legendary.
Yeah. But that was also part of the system as well. But they have an even better example that's even more close to home. That was even more recent. That is Diablo 4. Whenever they introduce endgame systems that gave you power, like the seasonal content of Diablo 4, where you got borrowed power, and they fumbled 2-3 seasons in a row until they got it just right now. So, and that's an in-house project. They have access to it. They can learn from it. What do people want to do in the game? And in Diablo 4, you grind like a motherfucker for it, and you love every second of it. So there is a good example of putting in good grind.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's very hard to translate what happens in a smaller world of an ARPG. They want to call it MMO ARPG, but it's not really that. But it's very hard to translate that into a big-ass super established online universe as World of Warcraft. But I do believe borrowed power will inevitably come back, because as much as when they introduced the new talent system and the hero talents that will probably listen, if they're gonna bring Midnight and they're gonna give us another row of hero talents, I believe a lot of people are going to be disappointed.
You cannot be just another row.
How are you going to market that? Okay, so you already have the hero talents, right? You're going to give what? Maybe a new hero talent, so you have
a new page,
something in along the lines of, so now everybody has two of them, right? You have Deathbringer and Rider of the Apocalypse, okay? oh, now we're gonna have a third one in midnight. I think that's gonna be a little bit.
It's clusterfucky.
Yeah, but also excitement-wise, hype-wise,
Okay.
people are not going to be that hypey about it.
We obviously criticized borrowed power for the last couple of expansions pretty severely because
And rightly so.
Yes, it was not fun. But if you really think about it, ever since Legion, you did not have an expansion without borrowed power. And if you, as much as it sucked, if you take away the borrowed power, the expansion would be fairly bland and very boring. And you could think of Dragonflight having the borrowed power as the new talent system, which was a new thing for you to engage with, which is what Marcelian is trying to say. Is like, if we have the same thing, it's not going to stick. We have to have something new. Now, what is that going to look like? Because if we had this conversation 2 years ago, we would have said, but after Dragonflight, what are they going to do? A new row of talents? And look, they added new talents, but it was like this whole new thing. Like hero talents, class fantasy, class flavor, right? So they have to do something to this scope magnified within Midnight and Last Siren.
Exactly, and I was showing there like the Ashbringer being like all pumped up with points and stuff. At first, when you had that, it was very exciting, right? You had, because we had the Excel spreadsheet talents, and basically the artifact weapons had points in it, and it was a reminiscent of the past when you would put points and you got excited. Oh my god, if I go to this or this, I'm unlocking that. Sure, it was all like super linear. Nothing really gave you an option.
And in the end,
to
you got all of
customize.
them anyway. So.
Exactly. But it didn't kill the excitement of breaking that point.
It was a journey. You knew you would get everything eventually, but it was the journey for the expansion. The journey didn't stop when you reached level, what was it? 110 on like
I don't remember what was the
100. Was it 90? No, 100 was in what? It was 110. In
probably 110. Yeah, if I remember correctly.
So it didn't end once you reached level 8. It didn't end in the first 8 hours of the expansion, your character's progression, right? Which now that we still have character progression, but it's the abstract kind, the get more eye level kind, which is the boring kind.
Yeah.
And you would have to have some way to progress your character, and Artifact Weapon was one of the best examples that was also Warcrafty.
It's the best example so far. Now, once again, if we want to get people hyped for the new expansion, because the War Within, how many people do you think got hype about hero talents when they first announced it?
Well,
how hype
initially,
did you feel?
I think the hype was way bigger at the beginning when we didn't know exactly what they were, because we speculated what they could be, and they turned out to be a little bit of a letdown. And every time I think about this, I think about Dark Ranger for Hunter.
Oh boy, this is
that was
bad child,
like the
problem child.
Dark Ranger was added in Shadowlands. Oh my God, Sylvanas! Now you can have your elf customized in Dark Ranger with like these emo eyes and pale skin and all of that, and you can even get her transmog. That was so cool. And they're doubling down with the Dark Ranger right now, but obviously it's it turned out to be what it ends up to be. And if you really let's say take the common denominator factor of all of the hero talents is just some more fun gameplay. Some of them get cool aesthetics, but not all of them. So do you care? Are hero talents a source of aesthetics, of cool new spell animations for you? Not necessarily, because if it's for some and not for others, then if you cannot get excited about a feature that you might not get if you play the wrong character. So the only thing you could get excited about is the gameplay changes, the impact, and that is a little bit bland across the board if that's all you're going to be excited about when it comes to hero talents.
This is the thing, and I was asking that because if they're gonna announce new subset hero talents in Midnight, or even like a brand new page that put below that in the interface, it's not gonna be happy.
It would have to be a new class at the very least, and I don't think that's even gonna be enough.
Again, because you have different selling points when you bring out a new expansion, right?
Yeah.
Traditionally, if you bring a new class, that's probably going to be hypey. I'm not sure, Dragon Evoker was that hypey.
Not that hype. No, I mean, it definitely didn't pull the numbers in the game.
Exactly. So you have that. Then you would have, the big villain on the cover. You would have this amazing new feature that would not necessarily be tied to power, but some sort of or a new gameplay loop or something. So there's different selling points. But when it comes to the things that make you play your spec class, whatever, and how it impacts that, if that is not hypey enough, you don't get the same reaction, you don't get the same vibe. Like, again, when they announced the first time we saw in Dragonflight the actual new talent tree, we were blown away, like in the trailer. It was like, oh my god.
It looked like WoW again.
It looked like WoW again, yes, sure. It was messed up in the first example they gave, I remember it was Druid.
It went through so many iterations. In the end, it turned out all right.
It turned out all right, but that got us excited. Okay, we won't, beat on this dead horse again. Dragonfly had a different issue for which the hype was not that real. But borrowed power, if put right in the game, and if they would attach some sort of like customizability.
There is, I do want to say, we didn't explore this topic a lot on our channel because it's not really the type of content that we do, but delves could be an example of how they could implement a different sort of progression / borrow power, where you feel like you're grinding for something that's rewarding and you progress through the entire of expansion.
Oh, hell yeah.
And it's full cosmetical in the delves, and it doesn't have to be necessarily, it probably have to be power in the end somehow, but like the way I look at the delves, with how you're progressing brand and unlocking new stuff and getting new customization for the mount, is the closest thing I can have to the artifact weapon. It's not the power that you get, but it feels like what you do in the game is basically shown visibly to everybody through the mount that you have, which was the weapon that we had back in Legion as well. So they probably could implement this, take this system from delves and actually put it into, I don't know, dungeons or raids, and expand your midnight journey from level 0 to level 100. Then you get points from doing raids, from doing dungeons. You unlock, hopefully sometime this decade, spell effects and cosmetics and skins for your spells, because we know they have the tech. They've done it in DFA.
They're lazy, or they just don't understand how
important that is. It's probably too much work, or maybe they don't have faith that it would be that big of a deal, I would imagine.
Yeah, but again, if it's borrowed power and you also give spell effects customizable, hey, that would be a big win.
Lose their collective shit.
Yeah, it would be a big win, definitely, because that happened in...
How many people did challenge modes, man, for no gear?
Yeah, exactly.
Just cosmetics.
Well, we got
Mage Tower did not reward you any gear, just cosmetics. Like, what is the power of cosmetics?
But here's the question, though. So if we're gonna have, at some point, again, the borrowed power, the type we didn't really like that much, okay? Are we still going to have tier sets, trinkets?
I don't think they can take this away. First of all, if you're implying that they're gonna bring back the type of borrowed power that we don't like, which is unlikely, considering that, they know.
I know.
And we know.
You
and
say
you know
unlikely,
they know.
but...
Well, I'm not saying they won't bring back borrow power. I'm saying the borrow power that we don't like, the Torghast type borrow power, right? Like, if they bring back, they're not gonna they've took away tier sets before, and that didn't turn out well for them, and they know, so they're not gonna do it again. It was an experiment, fair enough, well, take your risks. We want to live in a world where the devs take the risks with the game.
Of course.
Sometimes that can be negative. We have to take that upon ourselves. Like, sometimes if you want the positive, you have to, take the negatives when they happen. And that was the negative. We now know that it's not okay to take away tier sets, because they didn't have a fun alternative. Azerite was not it. The Shards of Domination were not it either. Holy shit.
Oh my god, the nightmares, the memories, holy moles. No, man, but seriously, they will have no choice but to bring something like that back. And the question is, if you're going to bring something like that, okay, you mentioned Torghast, there's a lot of bad examples, but eventually, because of how this whole talent tree works and with the hero talents, they will have to give you something, because this is how it works. You have to progress your character more and more. Now, I'm not saying, bring in a powerful borrowed power, some sort of I don't know, a necklace, whatever, you'll find a helmet, you'll find some way to make it stick to your character. I think the most important thing is, if you're going to do that, can you possibly make sure it has a transition into the next expansion? Can you evergreen it at least for 1 or 2 expansions?
There has to be, this is why I also wanted to bring the Diablo example, which is, we don't need it, because we have that in WoW still. But we've seen, Covenant abilities being more or less evergreen in certain specs, where they've made it into the talent tree. So whenever something is really fun and people really enjoy it, with the exception of Primordial Wave, it makes it into the game eventually in one way or another. Legendaries in Legion became talents eventually in BFA.
Okay, but
and
that's
like
different. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, okay, you bring it in a brand new system.
Are you saying that it should remain in the way that it is?
Yeah, evergreen? How you translate that from this expansion. So let's say Midnight will bring a brand new borrowed power system. It could be like a customizable trinket similar to what we had in BFA, the card trinket. What was it called? In
the Mechagon,
the Mechagon
punch card?
Yeah, the punch cards, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so something along those lines. Okay, that's gonna be, you're gonna have different elements to customize your trinket, and it's gonna be very powerful. That's gonna be the trinket to get, and along the whole expansion, you're gonna get different options to customize it. Okay, how would they translate and move that into the next expansion without killing it? Because this is always the problem with borrowed power. How bad did we feel?
See, that's the thing,
because
if we go into that direction, we end up in a direction of bloat, where we have way too much stuff. Because then
talents will get to that.
Yeah,
talents,
but that's why they're pruning it, and that's why they pruned it eventually. In what was end of Kata, beginning of MOP, or when did they prune it?
Well, that's okay. So the talents got more on top of each other from Vanilla to Burning Crusade to Wrath of the Lich King, and then in Cataclysm they pruned a lot of them. They made a lot of them, just mashed 3 talents all together into one. And then you had MOP, which completely scrapped it because they realized if we keep doing this, even pruning will not save it. And they brought up a brand new system for it. Now, fast forward to today, we have Dragonflight, where we're back to the same old talent tree with a lot of points. We get hero talents now. And at some point, you're gonna have to look at, okay, what else are we going to give these players to progress with? Now, okay, we're gonna give them again some borrowed power. Granted, not as grindy as in the past. The key element here, my friend, is to have it move smoothly to a different expansion. And it's not by coincidence I'm talking about a customizable trinket, because that trinket cannot work without its parts, the parts you put into it. Those parts could be salvaged for materials or whatever, and you have brand new parts in the new expansion to customize even more that trinket. So you're not gonna bloat it necessarily, you're just gonna make its transition a lot more smooth into a different expansion.
Okay, so you would replace some of its power with the new power from the new expansion, but the system is still there.
You have to, but not in the sense that you get rid of everything you worked for. Okay, you have to like salvage all of that to be able to get at least some starting new ones, so you don't feel as bad as we felt when we lost our artifact weapons.
It would have to evolve. It would be like the equivalent of replacing some of the talents that we have now with new talents.
Dude, it's if you're gonna dress it up in a different way, it's gonna be fine, you know.
Yeah, well, the way that would come into the game is not really important. The way it would stay into the game is probably important. And I mean, I'm not opposed to that. I just try to think of how would that evolve in a world where we're already complaining about how hard it is for new players to get into the game. Whenever they would have to get into the game and to learn, they need to learn talents, they need to learn hero talents, they need to learn
the gearing system,
they need to learn the new borrow power.
Crest and all of that. No, I'm talking in a more simpler world.
So they would have, like, the only way that I can see that, ironically or unironically enough, would be in similar to Path of Exile, where you would have to centralize the progression in like one thing. If we have too many separate things, it becomes a little bit too much. When you have gear, tier sets, talents, hero talents, trinkets, next, professions and all of that, and then you have this extra new thing, which I don't think is going to be a gear piece, because we've been to that role before. It would have to be something else.
It can be done right. You forget BFA, my friend, where we had Azerite traits, we had the necklace with its essences, and we had the corruptions. So when you're thinking about too many, did you feel overwhelmed? It was hard to get them. It was the grind to get them, but I feel. And I know we have a lot of BFA haters. We hated BFA for its capacity, but the things that felt right,
the essences were good.
Dude, the things that felt right, you have to give them credit for.
Oh yeah,
when
for
you
sure.
Because you say that, okay, there's too many avenues of systems of everything else. I agree, but we went to BFA and we still had fun. You know, putting aside all the goddamn mindless grind we had to go for, once you had the proper traits, because you remember we had at some point when they realized they gave us salvage, we could salvage a lot of the gear and would not be that problematic to get the proper traits and whatever. So you had the proper traits, you had the proper essences, and you had the proper corruptions. Now we were talking, because you felt you had a lot of power sources that were fun.
But see, okay, then if so that would be cool,
that makes that. I'm not
how would you transition that into the next expansion though, to make it an evergreen system?
No. I'm not saying to transition all of those. I'm saying we've been through that even more than what we had, like a trinket that's customizable. That's what I'm saying. Because you said like, okay, we're not gonna have another gear because there's too many avenues. But we lived through BFA and we had fun even with those avenues.
Yeah, for sure.
All I'm saying. So if you're gonna have a borrowed power system that could translate from expansion to expansion, it has to be some sort of, unique item. Trinket is one thing, but you can have basically any item or a new slot of a gear that would give you. This is the main thing. It's important for you to be able to customize it.
For sure.
This is the key element to it, because if that element, that item is pretty much worthless. It's a stat stick before you customize it, okay? So it has that value. That could be easily translated to a new expansion. You just bump up its item level, that's fine. But the really big power from it and the grind comes from the parts you put into it and customize it to your liking. So if you have this one thing, if you're a healer, you're gonna have different elements that would, amplify your heals, your cast, whatever. If you're a DPS,
so cool.
same thing. And those elements throughout the expansion, you're gonna gather those up. You're gonna have a special bag for it, or they're stacking up. You're not gonna fill your bags with all of that shit because that's stupid. You're gonna have like an interface, let's say, like similar to Diablo 4, right? It's all there, and you're gonna be able to customize it the way you want, depending on what type of playstyle you want. Your healer, DPS, tank, raiding, PvP, doesn't matter. Now, expansion ends. What the fuck am I going to do with all this thing I worked for? Simple. You get into the new expansion, you take all of those, you scrap them, you get materials to get started for the brand new customizable things from the next expansion, as opposed to like grinding for it.
Very reminiscent of remix gear.
I don't know. I have not played Remix, but it's one way of translating borrowed power, and you have one element, and you will not kill tier sets. You will not kill other trinkets that may drop weapons, all of that. You just have one more thing that could potentially last at least 2 expansions, and this. Not having to scrap talents and add on top of it more hero talents and all that. So all I'm saying.
It's a little bit. It definitely reminds me a lot of the artifact weapons, and it feels like it would be. I want to care about something again, and we definitely cannot have the hero talents.
That's why I keep banging my head about let the people customize the shit. Because you create an attachment for it, and you don't feel, even if it's like super grindy and super, you feel in the rat wheel, because you always have something to tinker with. It's much more fun, it's much more engaging, and you get this attachment to it. If you can add on top of it some sort of like cool effects or transmogs or whatever, that would be like
dope.
That would be dope. That's what I'm saying. So I feel that is the borrowed power we would need.
We would definitely need something more than just what we have right now. And I'm open for all sorts of things. I just want the game to be fun, and I want to have something to care about that they won't take it away from the BFA.
I mean, listen, it's fine if you want to, just keep on the more classic route of it. Right? You're just talents, gear from dungeons or whatever. But I mean, what about things that can
give the players what they want?
We want things.